Welcome into the Alabama Bass Trail podcast presented by Phoenix Boats. I'm Kay Donaldson, the director of the Alabama Bass Trail and the host for this week's podcast. And I guess I'm the host and the guest for this week's podcast. The reason for that being we have a lot of things to cover in the world of bass fishing on the Alabama Bass Trail and in the state of Alabama. So, and just to keep very clear and consistent lines of communication, I want to make sure that we cover this topic and cover it from the Alabama Bass Trail's perspective. So we're going to jump right in. We're not going to kind of beat around the bush at all about this. The majority of this week's podcast is going to be spent on the proposed 14 to 20-inch slot limit on the Coosa River, all 6 bodies of water, including Weiss, Neely, Logan, Lay, Mitchell, and Lake Jordan. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how this study became to be and how long the study took and all of that. And then we're going to do some takeaways from the questions that I asked after my meeting with Department of Conservation and everything that we have talked about up until today, which we're recording on Monday, August the 18th. I am going to apologize from time to time. I may take a drink of water. As you can imagine, I've been on the phone quite a bit over the last 14 days or so. So I do want to talk about the study itself. I do also want to say that this study was a product of several years of complaints that the Department of Conservation received on Neely Henry Lake about the declining in the quality of the fishing as well as post-tournament mortality on Neely Henry. I do want to state that Neely Henry is a fantastic destination for tournaments, the availability of housing or lodging, also the excellent boat ramp parking, the development that they've done in acquiring parking at the venue over that used to be the old Kmart building, and the ease of building that road back and forth. They provide transportation for us and all of that. It does make the city of Gadsden an excellent tournament host. So I certainly want to say that the reason for this study was to track, mortality and the quality of the fishing. So the Department of Conservation in their notes, and this was publicized by them, so I'm not giving anything away that they don't want given away. The project cost was $843,000 and took 3 years to do. The part that the Alabama Bass Trail played in that is that we did offer up samplings of our bass upon their request that we had weighed in at our tournaments. Depending on whatever time of the year it was over the last 3 years, we have given a portion of those fish to the biologists there at Auburn University to participate in this study. So again, this study was to strictly look at the declining quality of black bass, and that includes largemouth and the Alabama bass, as most people refer to it as it's the spotted bass. So that's what the study was to look at. Not uncommon for them to partner with Auburn University on these studies. It's been done many, many times. But we're going to go through the study a little bit. Again, this was posted on our social media. I want to say like the 13th or 14th of November. You can go back and watch that or go back and look at that there. I'm happy to send you a copy of it. If you want to inbox me at k@alabamabasstrail.org, be happy to provide you with a copy of the study as well as the list of questions that I posed to them after I returned from a meeting with them on November the 6th. So first of all, I was called into a meeting on November the 6th in Montgomery to meet with the Chief of Fisheries, Mr. Chuck Sykes, his Deputy Director, Fred, as well as Damon Abernathy and Matthew Marshall to discuss the findings, to discuss possible remedies to this, and then at the end, given the proposal that they were going to put in front of Commissioner Chris Blankenship and the Department Advisory Board. So I'll go into this, and again, this is not going to be a guest appearance type thing here on the Alabama Bass Trail podcast. We're just going to kind of go over this study. I'll go into, I've already told you how it came about, why the study was done. I have no idea how many inquiries they got or how many text messages or phone calls or emails they received talking about the decline of Neely Henry Lake. They just say the numerous complaints and persistent complaints from anglers talking about the decline in Neely Henry. Um, I want to also say that once the Neely Henry study, it estimated a very high annual capture rates of largemouth and Alabama bass. I'm going to refer to them as spotted bass. That may be incorrect, but Alabama bass is what they say. They only saw that 2% of largemouth and 4% of spotted bass were captured during recreational angling. And that would be if you and I are just going out having fun fishing, not practicing for a tournament. They don't consider that recreational angling. And the reason they know this is because of the number of tags that were called in from people saying that they were participating in a tournament or participating in practicing for a tournament, that opposed to the number of people who called in tags that were just recreational angling. So that's how some of that was brought into this study. 40% of total capture was during tournaments or during practice for tournaments. So that was how they related that. So only 2% of largemouth and 4% were captured in recreational angling. 40% of the total capture was during tournaments or practice for tournaments. It is estimated that 45% of the bass weighed in at tournaments suffered pre or post release mortality. We operate under the assumption of our numbers are about less than 2% that we keep from the lake and in post tournament. That's either you presented them at the bump sink unalive or they were unalive at the time we got ready to put the fish back in the lake. We actually keep the ones who die post once they're turned over to us and our fish care tanks. We keep those that pass away out as well, and we account for those on our weekly bait report that we submit back to Department of Conservation. So um, they admit that this is likely a conservative estimate. They feel like it could range anywhere from 50 to 80%, depending on the weather. And they go on to say that high school and college tournaments have increased numbers because of their summertime tournaments and also an increased amount of boats. So um, that's kind of how they figure that. So hot weather, we know that they're harder to keep alive during the hot weather, and we know that because of scheduling and different things, high school and college tournaments do typically operate outside of that the window of in that hot weather. Alabama Bass Show, we fish from January to June. We realize that those June tournaments do get a little warm, um, and we do give a lot of we try to give as much opportunity for survival as possible by opening our scales an hour early. We have always leaned on the side of keeping it a 5-fish tournament, just simply because that June tournament is the end of our season. It is the time that anglers are trying to make it to the championship, and we have done a 5-fish tournament up until that time. And we feel like it is a little unfair to go to a 3-fish tournament at that time when people are trying to make the championship. And I'm going to go ahead and read something about that in just a little bit, but that is what we've tried to do as far as not only educating you about fizzing, also allowing you to come to the scales an hour early. We talk about fish care, for weeks leading up to our events. So the results and the discussion in this was on Neely Henry. Capture rates were very high for both species. For comparison, they compare Lake Guntersville to having largemouth bass at 50%. Both of these lakes do receive extremely high pressure. Neely Henry is 6 times smaller than Lake Guntersville and does have an expansive overbank areas that offer good for black bass. Because the Coosa River reservoirs are so small, they are more vulnerable to the effects of tournament mortality, and they can withstand a fraction of the tournament pressure that, say, a Lake Guntersville can do. To put things in perspective, Neely Henry, Logan Martin, Lay, Mitchell, and Lake Jordan combined are less than 75% total surface acres of Lake Guntersville. So that is saying you put all of those lakes together and it's still only 75% as large as Lake Guntersville and probably still has as much, if not more, tournament pressure on those lakes. As we know, tournament anglers often target the larger fish when they're out there, as the heaviest weight is the one who is awarded the prizes. Tournament anglers also unknowingly selecting for faster growing fish, which subjected them to higher rates of mortality than slow growing fish. I'm not sure how they get those assumptions. But this next quote probably bothered me as much as anything in this study. Finally, it is estimated that approximately 70% of total tournament-related mortality is being caused by those competitors who do not have enough weight to earn prizes. The only way that I can figure they see that is that they go to our results page and look at 41 through 225 to see how many dead fish are counted there. But again, we account for everything that dies. So it's not just what comes through the bump sink, which is what is reported on our results page. But what we report on our bait sheet is what dies before we release them. They could have died in the tanks after we get them. There are sometimes that they come to us on a stretcher and we try to revive them and save them, but it doesn't happen. But I don't know how they get the number of 70% of the fish that are tournament related mortality comes from competitors who do not weigh enough in to receive prizes. Tournament anglers select for large, fast growing females, which are subject to these three groups, to the highest rates of tournament mortality. High capture rates are a function of small reservoir size, which compounds the effect of tournament mortality. Heaviest rates are very low, meaning tournaments are causing the majority of angling-related mortality. Therefore, reducing the tournament mortality is the best way to improve bass size structure. I've read through this and just by saying those few things, you basically get the fact that this is an all-out attack on bass tournaments. Why that is, I don't know, but it is. I mean, you can read through here and say tournaments. We actually encourage the weighing of non-competitive bags in order to award points to anglers and teams to help them qualify for a more exclusive, larger payout tournament at the end of the year. Obviously, this practice is inflating the mortality by encouraging all teams to weigh in their fish, even if they do not have weight to win a prize at that tournament. Eliminating this practice would prevent lengthy live well confinement, but it would decrease mortality directly related to the weigh-in process. So I don't think I have to read anything else to let you know that it 100% is an attack on bass fishing tournaments. I've had this conversation with bass fishermen. I've had this conversation with advisory board members. I've had this conversation with our lieutenant governor, and I'll have this conversation here on the Alabama Bass Trail podcast. This was presented to me on November the 6th. I was given a few options that the Department of Conservation had considered, one of which was catch-weigh release. They don't understand why all tournaments can't go to that. I will say exactly what I said to them in their office that day, is that team tournaments are under tremendous scrutiny over the ability to cheat in team tournaments. Both team members are buddies. They are fishing for the same money. There is no objective person on that boat when it comes to whether or not someone cheats, goes to a basket, does something outside the rules. They are both fishing for the same money, and there are no objective people on that boat. It would be extremely difficult in this day and time with this much cheating, as we have seen throughout all competitive fishing, not only on the amateur level, but what has perceived been cheating even at the professional level. There's no discussion that catch-weigh release is not better probably for the fish, but the cost of implementing that in team tournaments and high school tournaments and college tournaments is expensive, of which we do not have the budget for. So that in essence would shut down the Alabama Bass Trail if you go to that method. The other things that were suggested was that we do a permitting process and only allow so many tournaments on each lake. And while that sounds great, and a lot of people are out on the social media bandwagon with that, understand that there's a complicated process to that. Most tournaments, some that I've talked to during this process that I am very good friends with, say, we don't fill out a permit for our tournament. And yet there already is a permit process. There's no cost to it, but there is a permit process that some already are not doing. To their own admission, they're not doing it. And I'm not harping on them. Maybe they didn't know it was even out there. But there is a permitting process already out there. However, you can only apply for a permit 30 days prior to your event. So let's put that in context with how we do things here on the Alabama Bass Trail. Not saying we do it correctly. I'm just saying this is how we do it. So for you haters that want to go out there and say that I think everybody should do it like the Alabama Bass Trail, I'm not saying that at all. This is what I'm saying. This is the process that we use here at the Alabama Bass Trail. Like it or don't like it, that's up to you. We announce our schedule the first Friday in May. We then open registration to the public on August the 15th. This year, fortunately, we filled up in under 10 minutes. So on August the 15th, registration is closed. My first tournament is February the 8th. I cannot apply for that permit until January the 8th. So if I apply on January the 8th for a tournament on February the 8th that I'm sold out for and have been sold out for 6 months, and I'm denied a permit, then what do you do? So permitting sounds great, but under the current structure would not work. And let's say there's 4 Saturdays in a month. Let's just look at Alabama. You've got Airport Marine, you've got Sylacauga Marine, you've got Coosa River Team Trail, you've got Alabama Bass Trail, you've got ASA BFA, you got River Bend, you got Bass Tactics, you've got Bass Nation High School, Bass Nation Adult, West Point, West Georgia Bass Trail comes here, MPFL, BASS, MLF, BFLs, Invitationals, Toyota Series, all of which need tournaments and dates. And everyone is for permitting until you have 4 weekends in a month and you're the 5th one out. Sounds great, but the logistics of that haven't been worked out yet. And how do you have open registration, and how do you have someone register for 5 tournaments and then 30 days before the tournament be told that you're not going to get a permit and you can't have your tournament? Who gets priority? Does anyone get priority? Just some questions that I have. The other thing that was presented is that they can limit the number of boats you have. And they can. And that also limits the amount of payout that you can have. Because none of these organizations that I mentioned are going to be able to pay you 225 boats, 100% payback if you have 150 boats. So now is the payout worth coming to the state of Alabama from Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida, Louisiana, South Carolina, Illinois, Kentucky? Is it worth coming and paying an entry fee to come and compete for half the dollars? Just giving you some of the economics behind it. They certainly can do that. One of the other suggestions were that they could limit tournaments to the times that water temperature were under the 85 or 80 degree mark. Then we can fish in November, December, January, February, March, April. They can do it. again, when are all these other tournaments going to take place? When are all of the tournaments going to take place? It all sounds good until you put pen to paper and you think about the people who are going to be left out, which very well could be the Alabama Bass Trail. Not saying that we would be given any kind of preferential treatment, because as of sitting in that office on Wednesday, we would not be. The other suggestion or recommendation was given that cities prohibit any off-site weigh-ins, meaning that if you had a tournament on Lake Jordan, that you could not transport fish off-site to go weigh in, whether that be to downtown Columbiana, whether that be to the casino, whether that be anywhere. If you were in Gadsden, you could not transport those to the amphitheater. You would have to weigh everything in on site, of which I 100% agree with, especially when you have 300 boats. I think the Bassmaster Classic is a little bit different. I think that they have extremely good fish care at BASS. I think that a 50 boat tournament is way different than a 300 boat tournament. And I think a February, March tournament is way different than a May or June tournament. So I do see that cities will benefit from that. And I do say from on the behalf of the cities that is something that the cities are going to have to make sure that they address in their contracts. And that if they are paying bid fees for these events, that there are certain requirements that they should have from organizations from a standpoint of fish care, and they should stay on site to weigh in those bass. So those are my opinions. Again, strictly my opinions. I want to talk a little bit about the economics of it. As most of you know, I am a tourism person by trade. That's what I do. And the Alabama Bass Trail worked very closely with Jacksonville State University. We created a 10-year economic impact report that carried us from 2014 through 2023. We announced these findings on our Facebook page, as well as did a press release about them as well, because we are very proud of these numbers. In the first 10 years of the Alabama Bass Trail, our total impact was $94,292,259. That is the total economic impact of the Alabama Bass Trail Tournament Series and the Alabama Bass Trail 100. Jobs created 552. Just as from the direct impact of the Alabama Bass Trail, 690 when you consider direct and indirect jobs from the Alabama Bass Trail, and that is considering all tournaments on all lakes. $94.2 million in the first 10 years, one half of that being generated on the Coosa River. So $42.5 million economic impact on the Coosa River in the first 10 years on the Alabama Bass Trail. I then have a study that was also done by Jacksonville State University on the impact of Neely Henry Lake, where it comes to the Etowah County. And these standings were extremely surprising to me, actually. And I'm sorry to say that, but they were extremely surprising to me in that Etowah County, and this study is a little dated, so understand that costs have gone up for everything: food, gas, lodging, everything. Everything's gone up. That the economic activity generated by Neely Henry Lake in 2017 was $523 million, 731,618. And then when you include St. Clair counties, Calhoun County, and Etowah County, $570 million, 663,991. So just Neely Henry Lake, 11,200 acres, 339 miles of shoreline. That is the economic impact that Neely Henry contributed to the Etowah County, Calhoun counties, and St. Clair County combined is $570 million. Bass fishing truly does lure tax dollars to the state of Alabama, and it certainly lures tax dollars to Gadsden and Etowah County. We talk a lot about recreational angling versus tournament angling. No doubt, tournament anglers spend more money in the markets than recreational anglers. They buy gas more often. They buy more tackle. They buy, they spend more time in lodging than just your recreational anglers. There's no denying the economics of this. And when I brought that up in the meeting, the economic impact of the Alabama Bass Trail, and I can only speak from the economics of the Alabama Bass Trail, I was met with dollars do not set regulation, and we cannot allow dollars to set regulation. So that was the way that was addressed. I want to talk a little bit about some of the questions that I posed to them, to the two biologists. And this was the first one. Did you state that the slot limit would be for only tournament anglers? Yes, the regulation would apply only to tournaments. Tournament anglers, though a very small segment, cause the majority of the bass mortality affecting the fisheries. My next question was, what was the mortality? How does the mortality differ in let me reread that. How does mortality in tagfish differ from that of natural mortality? Natural mortality is about 30% on both species. The mortality we measured and discussed in the meeting is addition to the natural mortality. So a lake in general will turn over 30% mortality in a year. 30% mortality naturally. Either they die from malnutrition, they die from aging out, they die from virus, they die from injury, they die from whatever naturally. My next question is, does the implementation of large devices into a bass impact the long-term survival? No, the devices are small and the fish can survive with them up to a year or more until the batteries die. This study includes those fish that live at least a month after implementation. So a number of you may have seen some of the fish that came through weigh-in that had the radio transponders in there. That is what that question was posed about. Stress from injuries are known to be contributing factors in fish mortality. Could this be skewing the data? Their answer was, we do not separate mortality causes. Any death due to angling is considered angling mortality, whether the injury is from disease or harvest. Next question. What evidence is there that the cause of death is tournament related? This study and prior research shows that tournament related impacts implanted fish were tracked and classified as tournament mortality if they died after being caught in a tournament. How did your tagging recapture rate compare to other studies? Our recapture rates are very high, exceeding 80 to 100%, 80 and 120% in largemouth and spotted bass, respectively. Angler recapture was 50% on Guntersville, which is also very high. Is there evidence from other states, not Lake Fork, that wide slot limits work to improve bass population? Yes, Lake Fork just popped into mind because bass had just done their catchway release tournament there to avoid the slot limit. Slot limits have proven effective in reducing angling mortality, improving fishing quality, and benefiting anglers once they've accepted it. Is the overall bass population at Neely Henry or on the Coosa River low? The bass population is high, supported by the river's fertility levels. So bass population is high at Neely Henry and on the Coosa River. If the largemouth population is low, is it possible that spotted bass are out competing for the food and habitat? Largemouth bass are not low. but the larger individuals are fewer. Both species can coexist naturally in the Coosa without significant competition. Question. There has been a slot limit on West Point Lake for decades. The largemouth population continues to decline and the fish are worse than when the slot limit was imposed. How will the Coosa chain differ? The Coosa's fertility levels are stable, while West Point's have declined due to outside factors such as improved water quality, nutrient reduction, and invasive species spotted bass. Georgia has stocked millions of largemouth bass into West Point with no change in the bass fishery. Pay close attention to that. Georgia has stocked millions of largemouth bass into West Point with no change in the bass fishery. Would the implementation of the Coosa River minimum size 15 inches, same as on the Tennessee River, have a positive impact on largemouth population by allowing the bass to reach a spawning size prior to harvest or tournament involvement? Bass reach a spawning size of 8 inches, so spawning availability is not the issue. Most fry do not survive anyway, which is why stocking isn't effective. Our models show that a 14 to 20-inch slot is best for the fishery. A 15-inch minimum would not have an impact on the tournament mortality. If the regulation doesn't change the fish mortality, it won't improve the fishery. While it may be tough for a couple of years, the long-term benefits will be significant. Anglers must be willing to make sacrifices for a better fishery. Otherwise, they should accept the current state of the fishery. Is the largemouth issue both largemouth and spotted bass? Both species are impacted, but spotted bass mortality surpasses that of largemouth at temperatures above 72 degrees Fahrenheit when spots have higher catch rates. And we understand that spotted bass do have a harder time surviving in hotter water temperatures. I think we all know that. What does the mortality rate differ in species? Largemouth bass suffer higher mortality rate below 72 Fahrenheit, where spotted bass are more vulnerable above that temperature. The next question is the population structure of the Coosa changing to be more spotted bass dominant as the reservoirs age and lose fertility? This has been shown in other lakes and states. Their answer is both species are native to the Coosa. Environmental factors affect species ratios. Both these shifts are natural and not due to the current management practices. All Coosa lakes are very old, but they were also old 30 years ago when anglers say the fishing was great. Some are now more than 100 years old. A reservoir's age is not the problem and does not affect the fertility. So, that's kind of how the questions that I posed to them. I will now kind of go over some of my concerns, and I will address those here with you as well. For instance, all of the organizations considering the Alabama Bass Trail, Sylacauga Marine Trail, Airport Marine Trail, Coosa River Marine, Alabama Student Angler Association, Bass Tactics, whoever, have basically set their schedules for the 2025 season. While anglers, I'm concerned that this will cut into our participation of 30% or more, simply because anglers who are now coming to compete for a tournament that likely our weights will go from 23.5 pounds to win will be down to somewhere around that 11 to 12 pound range. It is concerning to me that we will see a decline in participation, and that again will decline our payout. No one in our industry can pay a payout based on 225 boats if participation is at 150 boats. The answer from that concern was, while tournament anglers may not like it, they are still able to compete on a level playing field. The best anglers will still win, and this regulation aims to protect the fishery for everyone. The vast majority of anglers will not be impacted. My second concern was stakeholders like the city of Lincoln, who have spent millions, $10 million on their facilities to attract large one-day and multiple-day events. This will cause the number of organizations to relocate events that generate millions of dollars for these communities. Their response: this regulation was designed to protect the fishery while maintaining tournament opportunities. The alternative solutions could have a greater negative impact. I'm going to say I don't think anything in this study or their responses is in a way to help maintain tournament opportunities. It is 100%. I'm not neglecting the fact that this is not tuned to make the fishery better, but I will oppose the fact that this is to maintain tournament opportunities on our lakes. And I say that because I personally spoke with other tournament organizations who have reached out to me to find the correct contact of people they should contact to say, we oppose this. We will not locate our tournaments here if this is passed. I won't call any names because I don't think that's fair. Other people are doing that. But I've personally been contacted by 3 organizations that say we will not bring our tournaments to the state of Alabama on the Coosa River if this is enacted, or if the cloud of this being enacted is still over our heads. So I agree that I think the Department of Conservation wants our fisheries to be better. I think that that is their number one goal. However, I do not think anything within this study and within this guideline encourages tournament activity on these 6 bodies of water. That being said, I did state that from 2014 to 2023, the Alabama Bass Trail generated over $94 million in economic impact. We have anglers who have participated from 12 states, and we sell out in under 10 minutes. Anglers desire to come to Alabama and fish, and I feel strongly that this would be a deterrent for them. $47 million of that have been $47 million of that economic impact has come from lakes on the Coosa River. Their comment to me was, we acknowledge the economic benefits of tournaments as well as the economic impact of all anglers that utilize public fishing areas and public waters. However, tournament mortality must be addressed to ensure the sustainable fishing quality of all Alabama anglers. Maintaining quality fisheries and improving the key is the key to retaining anglers and bringing new ones on. As we discussed, anglers in Alabama are on the decline, stating that they've seen many years of declining fishing license purchases within the state of Alabama. So one other concern I had was the aggressive slot limit will force tournament anglers to move away from the Coosa River, likely outside the state, to host their events. I feel strongly that this would that those affected should be informed of this decision, and is there a possibility of a stakeholders given a chance to weigh in on this? No pun intended. This is unlikely. Even if fewer tournaments occur, fishing quality will improve, leading to the greater participation and economic impact for all types of non-tournament anglers: bass, crappie, catfish. As we said in this morning's meeting, to the tournament directors was only one step. We absolutely have a plan to meet with local and tournament organizers. So that is how our conversations have gone. Again, I've seen headlines on people's videos that says this is an all-out attack on tournament bass fishing, and it's hard to not think that way. I'm trying to be very open-minded about it. I'm trying to see the bigger picture and the greater good. However, it is becoming increasingly hard to do that. I've seen a lot of posts about stocking. I've seen a lot of posts about Texas. I've seen a lot of posts about the Share Lunker program. If you listened to last week's podcast, you heard I had a gentleman on here by the name of Steve Wisdom, who works for a fishery that is, or for a hatchery that works on developing genetically strong bass. They call their bass Titan bass. I asked about that specifically in this meeting. Would we not benefit from a genetic stocking program? Again, I was met with, we can grow the same bass in our hatcheries as they can grow in their hatchery. We do not see the benefit of that. Our genetics are fine in the bass that we have in our lakes. So um, I've tried to approach this from several different angles. Um, Certainly hoping that cooler heads will prevail and that we will have a stakeholders meeting and that we can get something done. I've been asked by a couple of the advisory board members if I felt like there was a compromise that could be reached, and I do feel like there is a compromise that can be reached. However, at this time, based on the conversations that I've had, um, my hope is waning on that. I'm not a biologist and I don't claim to be a biologist. I am a tournament organization. I know that anglers will not drive 4, 5, 6, 7 hours to fish a tournament that has a much reduced payout. I know that they will not come and drive 6 hours to try to catch 11 pounds. Um, I know our customer, and in that being said, it will reduce our participation by 30%. Maybe that's what they want. That's what they're saying, is they want less tournament pressure, and that is exactly how they will get it from the Alabama Bass Trail. It will definitely cause a reduction. I don't know what that'll do with airport. I don't know what it'll do with Coosa River. I don't know what it'll do with Sylacauga. I don't know what it'll do with the high schools. I know that I've spoken with Lee Holmes at Sylacauga Marine several times. I do know his frustration with this. I know his outrage with this. I know that we've been working simultaneously on phone calls and text messages and emails, trying to get our message across to the powers that be. And that's what you have to do. You have to explain your side of it and hope that cooler heads will prevail and we can come to an agreement. Um, and I hope that's still a possibility. I'm a little more discouraged than I was a week ago. But I do want to say, for those of you who have email, called, Facebook message, whatever you've done, we appreciate that. I appreciate the support. I do feel a little like my hands are tied at the time, um, and feel like I really have no true, um, I feel like I don't have anything else that I can do as far as this goes, other than to just continue to express my opposition to it, my concern for it, and to say that if this can happen on the Coosa River, it can happen elsewhere. Um, it's very concerning to me. I think as anglers, we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. I think we have to be, you know, conservation minded. I think we have to do everything we can do to take care of our fish when they're in our possession, as we do at the Alabama Bass Trail. Um, I think that's why we have the strictest dead fish penalty in all of bass fishing. You know, we have a 1 pound dead fish penalty. You can only weigh one dead. That's why we have this strict limit. And a lot of you've criticized us for years and years and years and years for that. And you've brought it to light and you fussed about it, and you fussed about it on our stage, and you fussed about it on social media. And this is the number one reason that we have it, is to protect our fisheries. Um, we've been on both sides of the coin. We feel like we spend a tremendous amount of money on fish care. We spend $100,000 at the beginning of the year to have new fish care equipment. We pay someone full time to learn fish care, to manage our fish care. We do everything we can do within our power to stress fish care throughout all of our tournaments. But unfortunately, you know, and my comment was, whatever's passed, I'll be forced to deal with, and I'll be forced to go by it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of other people who will not, because they will move their events elsewhere. And that's sad. It's sad for communities like Lincoln, who have spent $10 million on a fantastic facility, that the Alabama Bass Trail can't keep them busy 50 weeks a year. It's unfortunate for facilities like Beeswax, where the Shelby County Commission has spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on the improvements, like Leesburg Landing, where the city put up, X amount of dollars, 20% in matching funds to get a phenomenal boat ramp and weigh-in facility created, to only have shut down because lack of participation in these events. Um, it's really it's really frustrating, to say the least. Where we are in this process, I will try to address that the best I can. We've been told that this will go to the advisory committee in January. They will be advised of it. They could make a decision then, or they could table it and wait till their May or June meeting. So at this point, it still is on the table, and there's conflicting reports. One person says it hasn't been proposed. It has not been proposed to the advisory board. It has came from the Freshwater Fisheries Department to Commissioner Blankenship. He does have it in front of him. He would be the one to propose it to the advisory board, and then the advisory board would be the ones to vote whether or not that this would go. This is not something that would go in front of the legislature. There is no fee attached to it. It does not have to be approved through the legislature, but it does have to be approved through the advisory board committee to be put in place. So at this time, I am not under the assumption that this will go into effect in the 2025 season. However, we will be keeping our eye on it and seeing what transpires. So, guys, that's really what I know. That's the easiest way for me to break it down to you. The concern with Department of Conservation is not the overall black bass population in these 6 bodies of water, but the population of those 20-inch and bigger fish. The population, they're saying, is significantly lacking in that area, and that they feel by putting an aggressive slot limit on it will help grow that segment of bass, that 20-inch to whatever inch that they're trying to grow. After talking with numerous, and I would say no less than 100 people in the past 7 days, no one feels that you are going to grow an 8 to 9 pound bass on the Coosa River. If you put gates up and didn't allow people to fish there for 2 years, there's significant doubt that we would see 8-pound bass grown in the Coosa River. Maybe. Not sure of that. Don't know that. We'll never get to see that because you're not going to shut down fishing in Alabama for 2 years. So, but I don't think that we are growing Lake Fork type bass, even if we go to an aggressive slot limit like this. For me, the economics of catching a 7-pound bass over a 5-pound bass does not change. My entry fee doesn't change. My payout doesn't change. I doubt I fill up any less than 10 minutes by catching a 7-pounder as opposed to catching a 5-pounder. I did have someone send me a message over the weekend that said a 19.9 bass was weighed in at Weiss Lake this weekend, and it weighed 4.94. So if this goes into effect, that bass will be thrown back. You will be, in essence, throwing back a 5-pounder. Your 2.5s, 3.5s, 3 3/4, 4-pound fish will be thrown back. Again, where we are in the process, to my knowledge, this is what's been proposed to Commissioner Blankenship. It is up to him whether or not he puts it in front of the advisory board in January, if it gets to that point. So I know a number of people have asked about communication. We have expressed our opposition. We've written a letter. We've written a letter to the Lieutenant Governor's office. We've written a letter to Commissioner Blankenship. We continue to check in on that letter. We continue to check with advisory board members. We continue to express our opposition and our concerns. We know a number of the cities have done so. We are continuously checking in on that and doing what we can behind the scenes. We all have a job to do. This will affect lots of lots of industries, lots of players in the fishing industry, and we hope that, like we said, that our voices are heard and that we can come to an agreement and hopefully um, a compromise can be met. So that's where we are on the proposed slot limit for the Coosa River. I hope I didn't bore you with too much of that. Not the kind of topics I like to address on this podcast, but unfortunately, it is the thing that is brewing here in the great state of Alabama. Oh, I was going to take a break, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go right on into this, and then we'll take a break after this. One of the number one reasons why I did not favor a slot limit or a catchway release on the Coosa River is this next story. As most of you've probably seen across social media, a gentleman by the name of Curtis Sanders was accused of of cheating by attaching a basket of fish to a buoy on West Point Lake this weekend. Many reports said that he admitted to that. I have not seen a confession from him. I've not seen him record anything, but several of the reports that I've heard say he did admit to that, that passersby and onlookers watched as he tried to send down a large hook to hook the basket, was unable to do so, showed a lot of frustration. Once he got back to the weigh-in, he was confronted by it, admitted to it, and that he agreed that he would pay back all of the money he had won throughout the year. Again, I've not talked to him. I've not seen any pending charges. I don't know if law enforcement were brought in any way. But this is a sad state of affairs. You hear of this happening. You hope it doesn't happen in your local tournaments, and you hope you never have to deal with it. But unfortunately, whatever event was going on this weekend obviously had to do it. And this is, again, one of the big reasons why I am against catchway release and team tournament fishing. It is just almost impossible to combat these types of things when we cannot have eyes and ears out on the water. So, um, if he didn't want to be famous, he certainly is famous now. And I had several people ask me, would this prevent him from ever fishing the Alabama Bass Trail? Yes, it would. To my knowledge, he is not signed up to fish, and this would prevent him from fishing with us in the future. So, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about all the things as we start to wind up registration and getting ready for the 2025 season in just a little bit. But right now, you're listening to the Alabama Bass Trail Podcast presented by Phoenix Boats. We'll be back in just a minute. You guys stay tuned.
Big banks only care about one thing: ROI. So when it comes to your small business, you can expect a big no. At AmFirst, we don't just invest in your business, we invest in you and your goals. With great rates on loans, lines of credit to help you grow, and business checking accounts. Because at AmFirst, business is personal.
Welcome back to the Alabama Bass Trail Podcast presented by Phoenix Boats. I do want to talk about some good news. And I hope that everyone was tuned in on Friday night as Shark Tank made its, big return. I guess they came back a couple weeks ago, but I had the opportunity to go with my daughter Emma to a watch party for Darian Craig and Brandon Eccles of Y'all Sweet Tea, and got to sit there and be a part of that night. And I want to just say it was a very, very special night for Darian and his family, Brandon and his family, and the entire Y'all Sweet Tea group. Y'all Sweet Tea is not a sponsor of the Alabama Bass Trail, and I hope our sponsors don't get upset about me talking about this, but I want to talk a little bit about Darian because I know Darian. Not because he's the talent on the Alabama Bass Trail Live, not because he's the TV host or anything like that. I had an opportunity to meet Darian when he was 14 years old and he was fishing on the Hayden High School fishing team. And he just had something about him that you knew. Like, when he's in it, dude, he's in it. And you saw that from whether or not we were putting out fish attractors on the Coosa River with Alabama Power, whether we were doing, the grass seeding for shoreline grasses for erosion purposes, or if you saw him fishing, or if you saw him afterwards when he left high school and started in, trying to determine who Darian Craig was going to be as an adult. And you saw him start Y'all Sweet Tea years and years before now, And he was calling me. I was working in the tourism industry, and he goes, what of these festivals should I go to? Should I go to the Balloon Festival in Decatur? Should I go to this festival in Birmingham? What are the festivals that you think would be good for me to go and get the word out? And at the time, he was making the sweet tea and he was serving it just like you would if you were in a food truck, now. And I saw him do that, and he started dating Hannah, right after that. And I saw them go to festival after festival after festival trying to get the word out. And then Darian came to work for us on the Alabama Bass Trail, doing our very first ever highlight videos on the Alabama Bass Trail. We worked through that, and the tea business wasn't going where he wanted it to, so he kind of halted that. Went to work in the industry for TH Marine, did some work there, did a lot of social media for other companies, and then finally decided that this was really what his passion was, and he wanted to develop a brand, and he wanted to grow the business from start to finish. And I think Friday night was just the accumulation of all of that. And to be there to sit and watch him and his partner go through that process and know that it started many months ago. And he actually was turned down at first, and then they came back in another year and invited him to come on there. And to see what he's been able to build, him and his team has been able to build over the past 3 years, has just been a huge testament to who he is and what he accepts. And he does not accept failure. And I listened to him talk about his high school basketball coach and the lessons that he learned. He and Brandon both learned from his high school basketball coach. And to be standing there with Pawpaw and Nana, who had a lot of the raising of Darian Craig, and just kind of realize all the people, Gerald and Leanne were there, who I originally met Darian through, and just to see the people in the lives that he did not take for granted, the presence that he did not take for granted. It was probably one of the coolest things I've ever experienced, to be able to sit back and really just love on somebody and show them the love and support that no matter which way it went, the amount of people in that room that was there for the common good of Brandon and Darian and y'all sweet tea was just almost overwhelming. And to sit there and listen to them talk about the process, and to listen to them talk about and watch online as it's going on, and the amount of people that went to their website and the amount of people, but for him to say, and I think it's on a clip today, for him to say, this is not about me. This is not about Brandon. And this is not about just y'all sweet tea, but it's about everybody in this room who believed, who supported, who through text, through email, through purchase, through their friendship, showed us this kindness and support. Just blew me away. And so I was honored to be there, and just honored to be a friend, and to be able to watch it from the sidelines was just really, really cool. So love their team mentality, and it was just really cool. Just really cool. I can't say enough about it. You'll see it all transpire on social media. Hopefully you got to watch the episode. If not, I'm sure they'll have a YouTube link up soon for it. But it was really cool. And so congratulations to Darian and to Brandon for their sweet deal that they got on Shark Tank. It was really cool. Both of his new partners FaceTimed him during the meeting, during the watch party, and how excited they were about all the excitement in that room was really cool too. So I will say this, if this didn't teach you anything, it taught me that no matter what odds are against you, no matter what small town you come from, if you have the passion and the want to and the ability to work for it, you can achieve it. And if I didn't know that before, I know that now. So thank you to Darian and Brandon for showing us all that in that room Friday night. It was super, super cool to be a part of. All right. So let's move on. We've got a couple things to cover before we close out this podcast. 12 days, ABT 100, guys. You got 12 days to pay your balances and get in for the 2025 season. That is December the 1st on or before close of business, 6 p.m. Please make sure that you have those in. You should have received a text message with your team ID and PIN number. That's what you need to get online and pay those. Please don't make me hunt you down on December the 1st. Please make sure you get those payments in. If you're not going to be able to participate with us, call us and let us know. We'll start working on getting a team to fill your spot. I think we got 32 people on the waiting list. I want to say like 7 have signed up over the weekend. So please make sure that you get with us. 31 days. December 20th is your final day to pay your Alabama Bass Trail payments. That is Alabama Bass Trail regular series North and South. December 20th is the final day, close of business being 6 o'clock. Please make sure you get those payments in. Again, your team ID and PIN number, you'll be getting that soon. John will be sending that out probably around the 20th or 21st of this month. You'll be getting that in the mail or in your text message. So please make sure that you do that. If you paid the $600 non-refundable deposit, you now owe $1,000. You can break that down into 2 payments of $500 if each team member wants to pay $500, or you can pay one lump sum of $1,000. But you do have 31 days to make those payments. We will have a podcast next week. It'll be our Thanksgiving podcast. We'll be sitting here offering up thanks for different things. We're going to make our list. If you have something that you would like for us to cover, I did have someone send an email, and I am going to try to have someone cover that next week on the podcast and address that question. I want to make sure that I have the right person, but with everything going on this week, it's just been kind of hard to get someone to come on this podcast with me I knew I wanted to discuss, my feelings about this from an Alabama Bass Trail's perspective. And I wanted to be transparent and clear and honest with everyone about what we're doing on our side, to oppose this. I won't say combat this. I will say oppose this, and oppose this pretty egregiously. So I didn't want to cloud the screen. There's 1,000 different rabbit holes we can go down and we can chase. But I think the clear and obvious things that we oppose is that it is only with tournament anglers, even though we understand you perceive the majority of the mortality from tournament anglers. That is a big sticking point. And then just the vastness of a 14 to 20 inch slot is just very aggressive and staggering to us. So didn't want to have to bring someone else on board to talk about that. But guys, we appreciate your support. And I know a couple of you emailed me on Sunday, and I probably responded to you with, hey, can you just let me enjoy Sunday and I'll get back to work on it on Monday. And that was sincere. My family deals with this job a lot outside the Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 hours and tournament weekends. And sometimes we just need a Sunday to sit back and decorate for Christmas and enjoy all of the things that we're thankful for. Especially after what we endured last year around this time, we're just thankful to be able to celebrate a Sunday, and kind of close the phones and close the computers and just enjoy, the time. So that being said, we do appreciate all your support. We appreciate all your comments. We are working on your behalf. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate your support. We're going to keep working. We're going to keep fighting, and hopefully, again, come to a resolution that is beneficial and agreeable for everyone in the mix. So we will keep fighting the fight. But until then, I do hope that we see you in the great state of Alabama. I do hope you will subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcasting app. Send us your comments, your questions, things you would like for us to cover on the podcast. We will keep our eyes open and ears open for anything in response to this, and we will pass it along as soon as we know something. But until then, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to the Alabama Bass Trail Podcast. God bless, good fishing, and as Big Daddy would always say, get outdoors.
Thanks for listening to the Alabama Bass Trail Podcast. To learn more about the Alabama Bass Trail, make sure and visit alabamabasstrail.org.